All right, we are back, episode 10. This one, I have no idea how it's going to go. So I'm with my buddy Matt. We're still back home, obviously following off of last week's episode. I was back home with my two buddies from home. I'm still back home for the break. And this one could really go a lot of ways. But I'll go ahead and introduce my guest. Like I said, this is Matt. I've known him since, well, actually, we met through my stepbrother.
Oddly enough,
you guys went to high school together, and wasn't the same high school that I went to, and just
an even smaller town, if you can imagine that.
Right, you're just up the road a little bit, and I'm trying to think the first time I actually met you.
I was thinking about that earlier today, honestly,
and I honestly can't pinpoint it. But regardless, we've kind of gotten to a point now to where you and I kind of stay in touch a little more. Well, that might not be true, but we probably like hang out more than you and him do at this point.
Yeah, for obvious
open
reasons.
That over there. Fuck. All right, it's fine. Honestly, we're probably at a point now where like you and I probably hang out with more than you two do, just because of all that shit that he's got going on in his life.
Yeah.
But we've known each other probably for like fairly well for 5 years now, I'd say.
I would say we've been hanging out for that long. At
Yeah,
least.
For sure. And honestly, we started getting closer when you and my stepbrother just kind of had like your own apartment over the summer in town.
It's usually how it works. You know, you can do a lot more shenanigans when you're not living with your parents and whatnot.
Right. And, you know, when we got to that point, like we were going out and just trying to find anything to do that we possibly could. Because like we're from a place where there's not a lot going on. Really, the only thing to do, unfortunately, is kind of like drink, hang out with your friends. A lot of people just hang out in like their fucking parents' garage and drink with their buddies.
Oh my God.
Play music, play fucking beer pong in the garage.
If you could find state land to burn a tire, there'd be fucking 50 people there. Like that's
very true.
That's a North Country party scene. It's just abysmal.
So like we got to know each other through that kind of shit. And you know, we've kept in touch ever since. We obviously you know, both going to college. He graduated a year ago. No, not a year ago. 6 months ago.
Almost a year ago. Yeah. May 2020.
Yeah. So like 6 months ago. And I'm still obviously in school, getting ready to wrap up. And, you know, we try and find a way to like go and see each other every once in a while. We were about an hour and a half away from each other as far as our colleges are concerned. And like I said, just kind of kept in touch ever since.
We like to have a good time.
So you got to stop tapping your foot, first of all.
Oh, yeah.
Because the microphone's going to pick it up and the camera's going to pick it up. But I think the first thing that we should get into is like your current career plans, right? So like that is something that you're doing that's traditionally not a very like sought after thing. I feel like it's a very niche kind of career path to follow. And I feel like even when you were going into college, it wasn't necessarily like you didn't know that's what you wanted to do, right? So I'll just let you go ahead and kind of like talk about what it is you're doing, what your future plans are, and kind of just, you know, maybe to like describe it to people that wouldn't be too familiar with it. You're still fucking tapping your foot.
Yeah.
Put your feet on the ground if it's going to be an issue. Jesus.
I just always do that shit. So I invest. I would say in the more of the realm of speculative finance. So it's not the traditional passive investing where it's like, let's diversify this portfolio. We have stocks, bonds, maybe some options, derivatives, etc. This is a lot more active. It's day trading. I don't like to say that a lot because oftentimes it comes with a bad connotation.
Right.
A lot of people do it nowadays. Therefore, a lot of people lose money. But at the end of the day, there are people who make a career out of it. It is possible to succeed. They've been doing it since probably, at least as I know of, the 70s. Mm-hmm. But I specifically trade foreign exchange. It's the biggest market out there. The stock market, US stock market, pales in comparison in terms of size, liquidity. It's a lot more predictable, at least when it comes to my sort of investing. So I've been doing that for 3 years. I started my sophomore year in college. I met this friend at a party. I had him on Snapchat. And then one day on his Snap story, I saw like, learn how to invest and make money. which is one of those multi-level marketing things, pyramid schemes,
Yeah.
as people call them. But the one way it legally wasn't a pyramid scheme was by actually selling a product. The product was a toolkit learning how to invest, day trade.
I remember this actually now.
Yeah. So for a while, I was trying to get people to sign up because obviously if I had people sign up, I would make money.
Right.
But I simultaneously got into the investing part of it and realized, well, I could work for this company, which is relatively finite, or I could just learn how to invest on my own accord, which would basically allow me to function on any market, because basically the market doesn't change.
Right.
So I started doing that. I broke away from the company eventually just to learn how to trade on my own. Mm-hmm. It was me and two buddies in college. We ended up starting a club for trading. And then eventually they transferred some of them. One of them dropped out just to trade full time. But now, flash forward maybe 3 years, I'm working towards trading for a proprietary firm is technically what it's called. Basically, it's just a way of saying an entity that holds investor money. And if you're a good enough investor, trader, or whatever, they will allocate some of that money to you. You try to grow it. So it's a 2-phase test. I passed phase 1. I'm in the process of passing phase 2, which is substantially easier than phase 1 too. And at that point, they will give me a $100,000 account, and then I'll just grow it from there. And the great thing about the investing world is you can just continue to reinvest your profits, whether it be into the same market or maybe the stock market, et cetera. But with this, I'm planning to just take my monthly profits, put into my own account, continue to reinvest in by just compound interest. Eventually it'll grow much faster than just the company alone, I guess you could say.
Absolutely. So one of the things you touched on, I think, like I feel like a lot of people are kind of like familiar with the traditional stock market, right? And I know for me, when you first started talking about this whole Forex trading thing, I didn't really have a very good grasp of what that was. I knew there was obviously primarily based off of like currencies, foreign exchange, the currencies that exist between different countries. But like, how would you explain that to somebody that has like no idea of what the hell Forex is, like in really simple terms?
Okay. I mean, I'm thinking back to how I explained it to my parents first.
That's probably the best way you could explain it.
It was basically like, hey, when you go to Canada, you could stop at maybe a duty free or something like that, someplace where they exchange cash. You give them $100, they give you maybe 133, something along those lines. That's basically the foreign exchange. The rate differs at minute levels, like 100th, thousandth of a decimal or of a penny, I guess you could say. So when you combine that with leverage, which is basically brokers, banks, et cetera, will lend you money to trade like higher amounts. That's basically what day trading is in essence. What was the question again?
No, I was just trying to like have you explain, like give everybody a better idea about what Forex is, because it's not as popular and it's not as well talked about as like the stock market.
Well, I guess because mainly there's nobody really passively invests in Forex.
Okay.
Whereas passive investing is so popular because it's relatively easy. I mean, you find good stocks, or rather good companies that are going to continue to perform well within the next 20 years or so. And you just stick with it. You ride the wave, whether there's a crash or not. Eventually, as people say, the stock does go up.
Right.
With foreign exchange, it's
bye.
Exactly. There's a lot of central banks. There's even the own country's well-being. So many different factors that can influence it. And it's not just like the currency has a natural propensity to go up.
Right.
It can go anywhere.
A number of different ways. It's unpredictable, essentially. Well,
for the most
entirely
part,
unpredictable, but
for the most part, it's unpredictable. Yes.
There's a lot of variability in it,
yes.
In other words.
So that's basically the gist of it. It fluctuates at a very tiny level, and what we do is trade off of those levels. Specifically, though, like for instance, if I was looking at my computer, I'd be looking for patterns. Just there is continuity in the market, even at such a tiny level.
Mhm.
People often don't think that's the case, but I mean, if you spend enough time looking at it, you will continue to see the same things going on, patterns with a little bit of variation, but at least enough similarity to profit off of it.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's I feel like for a lot of people it's still like a tough concept to grasp. And like you're trying to explain it, but I feel like, you know, if you're really going to try and understand this stuff, you're going to have to spend a little bit of time looking into it. Obviously the whole idea of foreign exchange, well, currency differences basically is the primary, you know, factor behind this. But, you know, if it's something that you're truly interested in, you're probably gonna have to spend a little more time than I think you would just trying to get involved in the stock market, because we're at a point now in time where like people can just download Robinhood, right? You know, link their bank account and they can be, you know, within minutes buying stocks. And I feel like that's not really the case with Forex. And if it is, not a lot of people know about it. So like, what are your thoughts on that?
No, that's not like when it comes to stocks, as I said, I mean, passive investing is usually the way to go. It's just, I mean, even slightly more active investing, it's just the idea of buying and holding for the future.
Right.
Whereas day trading, I mean, that's the complete antithesis of that.
Right.
It's in and out multiple times a day. So yeah, certainly there's a lot more, I guess you could say, research going into that. Whereas, for instance, when you learn like upper division finance, it's basically you learn about optimal portfolio diversification, where it's like, yeah, you have to have this much percentage devoted to stocks, speculative stocks. Then there's bonds, safer assets that aren't going to accrue as much, but it's also a lot less risk. It's very easy to learn that, I guess you could say, proportion. But when it comes to day trading, it's like you have to learn how the market moves itself by formations, market structure, timing. It's something you have to just expose yourself to eventually. And that's the only way you're going to see it. Otherwise, it's like you're just looking at just lines going in all different directions. You have no idea what's going on, basically.
All right. So there's a lot that has to go into it, realistically.
Yeah, to say the least.
It's not just a real simple plan.
Despite what people make it seem like, because a lot of people like to brag online, like, oh, I day trade stock. I bought Apple the other day and I gained $10.
Yeah.
It's like, listen, buddy, wait 3 years. He's going to be down $750 and living in his mom's basement. Like,
right. That's fair. So we kind of touched upon your immediate plan, what hopefully is going to happen in the next several months to a year. But assuming everything goes exactly how you want it to go, let's talk about what your plan is 10 years from now. Basically your 10-year plan and your future, your end goal, I guess you could say. What does that look like?
So I guess I'll start a little bit before that.
Okay.
This is just based off of projected account growth. I should be able to hit 1 million profit by, I think, 2 years, if my calculation is correct, something like that. And that is slightly hopeful, but it's still just as long as I get this 10K account by the next.
What would you say would be the low end? Like million is hopeful.
Low
You're being
end,
a little pessimistic about it.
6 figures is the absolute low end. I should have 6 figures by within a year easily.
All right, I'll race you there.
All right, well, let's go. It's I mean, it's basically just based on the assumption that my trade setups will continue to work as they had. Because beyond that, it's not even hopeful. It's just I make this much a week on average, multiply that by how many weeks out, account for a couple bad weeks, boom, it's a projected growth.
Okay.
But
so that's 1 to 2 years out from now.
Yes. And
then so building upon that, looking towards that 10-year goal, what are you thinking?
As I said, I'll continue to reinvest my other profits that I get from that company. But eventually I will look to, so these proprietary firms are not just online. There's oftentimes in-person proprietary firms, such as like hedge funds. They're basically the same thing, more or less, little tweaks. But I know of a couple of them that'll fund you with up to $1 million, whereas this company only funds you up to 300,000. They're just a smaller company, whatever.
Right.
So I'll look to get into that. And by then, 1 to 2 years, I'll build my trading reputation, my trading rapport. I'll have like an actual record of my transactions, I guess you could say. Do that for a couple of years. And obviously along the way, see, it's not just I day trade. As I said, I speculate. I function in the realm of speculative finance, which basically means I like to look for high reward, infrequent opportunities, such as market crashes. Like if I would have been as knowledgeable as I was now, I would have tried to capitalize on the potential of the market crash prior to the coronavirus. But
Right.
You live and you learn. Hit the next one, I guess.
Exactly.
Work to function on that. I'm not really sure what the economic conditions are looking like for next while. If there's a crash, I'll be ready for it, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, I was also thinking potentially starting my own hedge fund / proprietary firm.
Okay.
Just because the way I day trade is very, very esoteric. Not many people know about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a lot lesser known in the community. So I'd like to get a group of like similar minded individuals. I feel like if you can apply that together, you know, you could probably
you might have your own little pyramid scheme kind of thing going if you play your cards right.
Fuck that shit. We'll just be robbing the markets, if anything, not robbing individual humans.
Well, that's something. So if everything goes completely according to plan, aside from just like what your career would look like, you know, where would you like to be as far as like located in the country? Like what kinds of things would you also like to be dabbling in, you know, if everything goes according to plan?
Certainly. So definitely I'm not planning on staying in upstate New York for much longer. Thankfully.
I wonder
Hallelujah.
why. I wonder why.
Finally get out of this fucking place. I'm planning to either go to California or old PD over here is trying to convince me to go to Nashville.
I mean, why not?
Definitely wouldn't be bad. I mean, the shenanigans would be absolutely unbelievable.
I mean, this is the best time to have like ultimate shenanigans. We finally have like money to fuck around however we want.
I know, right? And also their tax policies are pretty
way better than fucking New York.
Pretty good.
But even if you didn't move to Nashville, like still talking like end goal, absolute dream scenario, what do you do?
Yeah. So definitely living somewhere warmer for sure.
Yeah.
And I
have to deal with the bullshit winter.
Yeah. I mean, that's fucking huge. I hate the winter so much. Definitely. I mean, by then, if everything works out, I will have accrued a good amount of wealth, which I believe that I'm like intelligent enough to be able to solve some sort of major issue that may arise. Homelessness kind of intrigues me a little bit.
Oh my God.
Because I feel like it's a very simple problem that if you just applied enough time to it, you'd be able to figure out some way to at least reduce the population by a good amount, or at least prevent it. Because I feel like a lot of homelessness is due to simple like financial illiteracy, people taking on debts they don't know about, just not understanding the concept of saving, perhaps. So I feel like something like that, something more meaningful. Because I'm gonna, like, the way I look at it, I'm gonna have this money. I'm gonna be retired at a very early age. What am I gonna do? I could sit around and fucking play golf all day and just become fat and eat cheeseburgers. Or I could like use what I think is a given, you know, like intelligence towards something better, I guess.
Something useful, something that can benefit more than
something
just yourself.
Practical. Yeah. And also I do like the sort of intellectual challenge that would come with like perhaps solving a major issue such as that. Homelessness is just one example, of course. Along the way, I'd also like to educate myself, I guess. I mean,
in terms of what?
I do like learning. Like school is a very, it's hard to say that you like school because it's just like the dynamics of it are very tough. But when it comes to actually like teaching yourself interesting topics that you think are cool.
Right. That's part of the problem is like school, like high school, for example, you're being taught things that you don't really have a say in. It's just like the traditional, everybody's going to learn this. So you can have a broad understanding of all these things that everybody else does in the state, everybody else does in the country. It's like, you don't have a choice in that. And then even when you get to college to some extent, at least like if you pick a major, your first 2 years are based primarily off of just like fundamental classes that everybody has to take. And it's like, if people can't do well in those, we'll just fucking kick you out. And then maybe your last 2 years, your last 3 years, then you're starting to get into like the specialized classes that have to do with what your major is, that have to do with what you actually want to do in the future. But outside of that, a lot of the stuff that you're being taught isn't relevant to like your genuine interests.
Yeah.
And like, that's where I feel like, you know, especially for me in the last 2-3 years is like, even just learning about how to do fucking podcasts, like learning more about content creation, learning more about the stock market, learning more about like fitness, nutrition, wellness. Like before I came to college, none of this stuff was on my radar.
Mm-hmm.
But as I've spent more time learning these things, I found out that I kind of have an appetite for learning new things. Right. Because like literally none of these things were on my radar, like I said, at all. Before I started college. And now it's like, I'm so glad that I decided to take the time to pursue these things on my own. And, you know, I'm like a shell of the person I used to be because of some of this time that I've taken to learn new things. And that ties into exactly what you're saying is like, if you are successful and you make all this money, you retire early, it's like that shouldn't be it. Like there should be something else. Like you should always be striving for something else.
Well, it's not just that, like once you go through the process of, I guess, like becoming an entrepreneur, of becoming successful. And I say like, I like to group, like for instance, like making it D1 in basketball and let's say scoring a job with like a major bank, Goldman Sachs. Like those are like, in my eyes, it's the same thing. It's like this level of like success that is so big that it's only achievable by that like process of just like grinding for like ridiculous hours. Like, I don't know, Michael Jordan.
Right.
You get what I'm saying though? It's like an obscene amount of work exerted at a much higher amount than like the other individuals.
Basically like nothing worthwhile comes easy. Right.
Yes, exactly. Like that's basically like we just glorify these actors and these singers and we're like, oh my
athletes,
God, they're so talented.
And like, there is like a tiny portion of people that just fucking make a TikTok that goes viral because they're decent looking.
Maybe you got lucky, yes.
Aside from that, for most people, that's not the case. That's not why they became successful. That's not why they made a fuckload of money.
No, they're not throwing their ass in a fucking circle or flashing their tits on TikTok. No. These guys like legitimately the majority of individuals who are successful at that level, I mean, they just worked a shit ton. And eventually, once you learn that, it's very practical, I would say, because I mean, above all else with this day trading stuff, I've not only learned how to deal with the market conditions, but I've also learned like the process of like being an entrepreneur. Like once you just stick to something for long enough, eventually you're going to get it. It's inevitable. I mean, my God, that's why I've always said like I'm never going to quit trading, because eventually I know whether it's 5 years down the road, 10 years, I'm going to get it. And then from there, it's just going to be.
Like that grind could potentially suck ass and be terrible. And you might not find yourself in the best financial situation within the first 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 years. But like if you stick with it, literally the sky's the limit.
Yeah. And let's compare that to, let's say, a 9-to-5 job. You get a 9-to-5 job. I know. But it's only facts though, because you work 8 hours a day, minimum. Some people work up to, I don't know, 12 maybe.
Yeah, I'm cutting it 8, but anyway.
And you do that for how many years until you retire? Let's say 40 or something like that. Like it's basically the decision of a lot of hard work up front and then just a free life with the entrepreneurship, or it's like a dragged on fucking torture for 40 years. And I mean, whatever. Some people have different preferences, but in my mind, it's like the obvious choice is find a career, go ham at it for a little bit, make enough money where you're living the free life. Cause then for the rest of the time, you can do whatever you want. We're not meant to work for 8 hours a day. Like that just seems a little bit wrong, but people oftentimes take a different track on that. They're not saying, you know, become an entrepreneur. They're like, fuck the whole system.
That is a majority of people, honestly. And for some people, you know, that's all right. Like that's what they're looking for. And there are some people out there that enjoy that 9-to-5 kind of gig. And obviously like being an entrepreneur is not the lifestyle for everybody. But I mean, if you kind of look at the people that tend to enjoy what they're doing the most, and the people that tend to like be, you know, fairly more successful than the average person. A lot of those people kind of pursued a passion, one of the things we talk about a lot on this, and just stuck with it, even when people were telling them that you're stupid, this is never going to work, this is a waste of your time. Like, they continue to stick with it through all that shit. And, on the other side, they came out a winner. They came out successful. They came out, to a point to where those same people that were saying like, this is a stupid fucking idea, were saying, oh, like, how did you do that? And, sending DMs being like, hey, could you help me out with this? Or like, could you reshare my post on this? Or like, sponsor my business, or, that kind of shit. So a lot of it, I think too, is like a mental game.
Oh, dude, it's
that's
huge.
Honestly not even a little bit of it. Like, most of it is a mental game.
No, I completely agree. Like, it really, the whole process of going through something like this for such a long time, you learn a lot about yourself, and just a lot about, I guess, certain tricks you can use throughout life. You just get a better outlook on things, I guess, because it's always good to go through struggle. You always come out a lot stronger, I would like to think.
Right.
Fucking A-over.
No, we're just talking about like in general, like how typically like the odds be stacked against somebody in a situation where like, there's a bunch of people talking shit about what you're doing. There's a bunch of people saying like it was a waste of your time. But when you come out on the other end, all of a sudden everybody wants to try and like, use you to try and propel themselves in whatever they're doing, whatever they're pursuing. They're ask for sponsorship, whatever it may be.
They're trying to ride the wave. Yeah.
Exactly.
No,
ride the wave.
I mean, in my mind, that's just the I guess path of an entrepreneur. That's to be expected. And that's why, like, oftentimes, because I mean, my dad's side, they don't know a lot about like finance, I guess. So when I say like, I'm going to do this for a career, he's like, there's no way. It's like
a foreign concept. Like, it's like you're literally speaking fucking a different language to them.
It's almost not even like saying, no, you'll never do that. It's almost like he has no idea that that's even like a conceivable thing. Yeah. And I've had that. My mom obviously didn't really believe in it for a while. I even had a professor who, speaking of the devil, even had a professor. She worked at Merrill Lynch, was a pretty big bank. She worked on a trading floor. Not exactly the same trading I do, but it's similar in some aspects. She said what I was doing was gambling. This is like a person who's worked on Wall Street. And she said that. But at the end of the day, it's like, I know there are people who make money off of this. As I've said, they've made money off of this for decades now. It's possible. So just find somebody who's making money on this, teach yourself it, and eventually it will work out, whether it's a year from now, 3 years from now, or 5 years from now. Eventually it's going to work. And I mean, the one thing that I really like about day trading in general, or investing, options trading, etc., the scalability is so ridiculous. You can only grow a business so fast, because not only do you need to increase, let's say, the inventory to fill all the sales, you also need to increase the warehouse size to fill all the inventory.
Your workforce,
and all of that. I mean,
I could go on and on about the list of that kind of shit.
Yeah, exactly. It's, when it comes to growing businesses, it's very multi-dimensional. But I mean, with investing, it's like the investing's the same. It's just a matter of how much money do you have in your account.
Right. I mean, it's essentially you're not too concerned with what everybody else in the company is doing, trying to hire new people, trying to promote people, trying to lay people off that suck at what they're doing. Like, hiring new people, like, all of it is just you. Yeah. So there's a lot less overhead that you're concerned with.
Precisely. Either you're good at trading or you fucking suck dick at trading, and you're lining those greedy Wall Street bankers' pockets right now.
For sure. So one of the things that you and I have kind of debated in the last few weeks since I've been home is like, where you want to move to. Obviously, we've decided that this is not where we want to be. There's not a lot going on up here, unfortunately, anymore. One would argue that maybe 20 years ago, this could have been a decent place to be as far as your career path. Like, honestly, like, as far as growing up, it's been a pretty good place, like, especially in high school. Like, kept ourselves out of trouble. Like, there's not a lot to get involved with that could be like lead you down the wrong path. But when you get to a point where you're trying to pursue like something greater than that, there's not a lot of opportunities here for us. Very small population, a lot of businesses closing down even before COVID. So we've kind of had this debate, especially since I know where I'm going to be, starting this summer, where you're going to end up. So what are you thinking? And, I think you should move to Nashville.
I mean,
because it'd be a lot of fun. But what are you thinking right now would be the most ideal situation for you? Like the most likely situation that you end up in?
I mean, it's tough because for a while I was telling myself California was probably going to be it. But
and now all the odds that would point towards California, aside from the time difference, are pointing against that.
Well, I definitely think it would be fun because I have past fraternity brothers that live down there.
Mm-hmm.
I know of other traders who live down there, which I mean, I don't know them necessarily, but
like on a personal basis. But
yeah. But I mean, once you're a good trader, you just kind of connect with all the others because it's like, all right,
same social circle.
Yeah, you all went through the shit and you guys became successful. And as you said, basically the only reason I'd want to stay would be due to the fact that there's a 3-hour time difference. So the best session to trade is the London session, quote unquote, which in Eastern Standard Time, which is where we are, it starts at 2 a.m. And then usually goes till about 5 a.m.
Rough.
Yeah, rough to say the least. I've had some pretty fucked up sleep schedules trying to trade that shit, and it does not go well. So if I was in California, that would mean I'd be trading from 11 p.m. till about 2 a.m., which I mean, that would be easily manageable. I could actually have somewhat of a normal sleep schedule, but
somewhat of a normal life.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
But if I go to Nashville, I mean, the second best session to trade is the New York session, which in Eastern Standard Time starts at 9 o'clock. Nashville time, it would start at 8 o'clock, which I mean, whatever, that wouldn't make a difference, but I still wouldn't be able to trade the best session, the European session / London session. So right now it's kind of a toss-up about that. While I'm still going on Eastern Standard Time currently, I'm trading on the New York session. So I'm going to continue to see how, I guess, the profits stack up, try to compare it to some past European session data just to see if I'm really missing out. Because who knows, maybe I'm not actually missing out on that much money and it really wouldn't be that worth it to trade the overnight session. But I don't know. At this point, I definitely feel like it would be the best idea. And then eventually, this is long term, live in Europe for a little bit. Because basically, I would be able to trade both sessions, which would mean the European session would start at like 8 or 9 a.m. And I'd just be able to bull throughout that.
Profits.
Oh, goodness gracious. I'm seeing green.
That'd be nice. But, while you're in California, if you were to make that move, everybody's fucking leaving for a variety of reasons. But one of the things, it's so goddamn expensive to live there and to like actually be able to enjoy your money. Unless you're fucking loaded, you're an actor, you're A-list Hollywood, you're an athlete, you're like any of that shit. You're a Forex trader. But yeah, that like with some of the political shit that's going on, like some people have been persuaded to move away because of that. The fucking environment. Well, I mean, not the environment, but the climate. They have fucking wildfires all the goddamn time. There's another one going on right now. Landslides. Fucking. It rains 2 times a year? Not actually, but it seems like it. There's just a lot of reasons pointing away from why people should move. And you're starting to see some of these like celebrities moving out of the area too. And they're just like, it's not worth it at this point. So definitely something for you to think about. Obviously it seems like, yes, you have your friends there, but you guys could be balling out so much more if you took all the money that you're going to make and move somewhere that's not LA, California, just California in general, honestly. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, no.
And we'll be having a great fucking time in Nashville.
Oh, I know. It'll be ridiculous. And that's probably, it's basically you badgering me about going to Nashville.
Well, I'm not going to stop. So
I know. And also the overall condition of California. As you said, everyone's leaving. The politics are a little wonky.
They're pretty one-sided.
Very restrictive at the least.
And
trying to stay non-partisan on this, but they're very, very restrictive. Taxes are ridiculous. Definitely would not be in my favor. In Nashville, Tennessee, at least anyways. There's some little loophole about capital gains, which is more favorable than other states, I believe. So that would at least be in my favor. I mean, wherever I'm going, it's going to be a good time.
Yeah.
Nashville, people don't give a fuck. They're open
Right.
right now, dude. Party
know.
without mask on. Jeez Louise.
I know, it's crazy. It's literally like a whole other world.
Yeah, I can't even remember that world at this point. I mean, that was
It's been so long.
8
I mean,
months ago?
like 10 months ago.
Holy shit.
It was like, well, no, like, no, somewhere in that realm. But honestly,
long.
it seems a completely different world. But let's just take a second and think about what Nashville would be like. Just for a minute. Let's just think about it. Because like I'm going to get to live it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get to live it with me, we'd be living a little better because we could split the cost of a place. Somewhere close to Broadway, all the bars.
I'm hearing a lot of country music.
A lot of country music, which isn't a bad thing.
Beef jerky. Cowboy hats.
A lot of breweries. A lot of moonshine.
Absolutely gorgeous women. I can only imagine. I mean, I've never been, but I imagine they're better.
It's the number one bachelorette city. All the bachelorette parties go there. They fucking do the pedal tours. They go out to all the bars on Broadway.
Say less.
It's popping.
I'm down.
But you want to go to California instead, where everybody's moving away from.
Hey, there's some pretty good looking women in California too, though.
For now, until they all decide to move too.
Yeah, the Californians, they got Hollywood.
Because everybody's trying to be fucking some sort of actor or celebrity.
Look, I don't know. Believe me, I would not choose California if it wasn't for the time change. That's basically it. I mean, there's still Las Vegas and Nevada, I guess, and a couple other states, I believe, but I just don't know people. I'm gonna at least know a few people before going to an area, just so we can have that base to start off with.
I mean, I only partially know a handful of people down there. And when I say a handful, I mean maybe like 3, and that's not super well.
Nashville?
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. But we're about halfway through right now. I think we're going to go ahead and pause it, take a little break, then we'll come back and get right back into it. Does that sound good to you?
I need to get more Pringles.
All right, we're back. So we kind of left off at a point where I think it'd be good to go into you giving some advice to people that would be kind of following like a similar path to you, even though you're not quite where you want to be yet. Like, what would you say to people trying to pursue something similar?
So first and foremost, I always like to say, find an edge and exploit it. So what that means is whether it be winning a high percentage of trades that award you a little bit or winning a low percentage of trades that win you a lot. There's multiple ways to succeed in day trading, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Multiple different strategies. Stick to one strategy. Just go at it for, maybe it'll take a year, maybe it'll take 2 years. It took me 2 years with this specific strategy of mine, but I finally understand it. Have solid risk management, which basically referring to what I was just talking about. Combine that with the statistical edge and just exploit it to your benefit. So for instance, when it comes to my day trades, generally speaking, if I have a loss, that'll occur 40% of the time. 60% of the time, I'll have a win. The win will be, let's just say, 1.5%. The loss, when it occurs, is like 0.5%. So automatically, just due to the asymmetric profit, I guess you could say, I'll be profitable, because I mean, 60% of the time you're winning anyways. Plus you're winning more than you lose. Different people do it different ways. I have another strategy where I lose the majority of the time, but the payout is so big that eventually over time you'll be profitable.
It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, exactly. So find your own niche, I guess is what I'm saying. Stick to it, learn it, put in a lot of chart time. I mean, myself, last I counted, which was probably about 6 months ago, I had 2,000 hours worth of chart time. So that's basically that's me trading. That's me researching, just teaching myself. Eventually you'll pick up on the little nuances, the little differences in the day trades, because I mean, especially when it pertains to day trades, there's a lot of noise that goes on, just a lot of stuff that you don't need to pay attention to, but some vital little things that will make a big difference. Depending on your strategy, those vary, but eventually you'll just get to a point where you recognize it, take the best setups, and you'll profit. And all that I'm talking about, like with the statistical probability, the edge, I mean, it's not just investing. People apply this to sports gambling.
Yeah.
Horse races is another big thing. When people talk about horse races, people always think that they're going to gamble on the best horse, the winning horse, which in reality, if you're trying to be long-term profitable, that's not what you want to do. What you want to do is you want to look at the statistical layout, the probability of every single horse that's racing. Odds are pick the lowest one because the payout's going to be the best. Let's say the payout is 10-1.
Mm-hmm.
There's 6 horses. So what that means is jumble them up. Odds are the horses are about the same. So 1 in 6 times, approximately, that horse is going to win. And if you have a 1 in 10 payout, eventually you're going to win with a profit. You get like eventually your wins are going to outweigh your losses.
For sure.
So as I said, people apply it to sports gambling, etc.
Okay.
And I would say probably the last thing, the most vital thing is, as with day trading, as with any profession, whether it be professional sports, even law school or something like that, you just can't give up. I mean, one of the main arguments against me succeeding in this business was it's very risky. Well, what's the risk? Is the risk somehow I'm going to lose more money than in my account than that is in my account, and they're going to take my house? No, that's not possible. The risk is not many people make it in this business. Why did not many people make it? They just stop trying eventually. They lose hope.
Right.
So to get rid of the risk, all you have to do is just say like, all right, I'm not going to stop. And whether it be, as I said, 3 years, 5 years, even 10 years. I mean, at the end of the day, once you get it in this business, as with many others, the scalability, you just make oodles of money, ridiculous amounts.
For sure. So kind of what you just were talking about is, kind of what you would say to people that, would like give you a hard time for all this shit. Like, I know when you first started talking about this, all of us were like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, this is a waste of your time. This isn't going to go anywhere. This isn't going to go anywhere. You should just stop now while you're ahead before you invest all this time in it. And you'd be much better off if you did that. So like, what would you say to like all those people that are like saying, this is like a 1 in a million thing. Like, it can't happen for me if I don't put the time in. Like, it's just a waste. At the end of the day, it's just a waste.
Well, as I said before, I mean, I kind of expected that. I knew that people would object to this because it's just, I mean, anytime anybody says like, oh, I'm going to start a business and it's going to succeed. I mean, I'd imagine there are people with Bill Gates, let's say, who are like, no way. And I mean, he probably didn't expect to become one of the biggest, I guess, billionaire investors of all time, but it happened, and people probably still didn't believe that. So it's a typical attribute of becoming an entrepreneur, I guess you could say. And I understood that from an early point, so it didn't really bother me. But simultaneously, people who say that it wouldn't work, it's always kind of like, I hate to say it fuels me because it seems like very cliche, like I'm in a fucking sports movie or something. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to get better. Just like fucking, no, fuck that shit. But legitimately, it's like in my mind, I'm just thinking like that one moment when I'm actually making a lot of money. And it's just like proving the people wrong. It's a very poetic justice, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
There's definitely something to look forward to. And it does push you forward a bit. Because especially when it comes to like what I was just talking about, not giving up and sticking to this, it's a lot easier said than done. It's not just, you can't just be like, oh, I'm just not going to give up. If it was that easy, everyone would do it. You have to have a lot of things preventing you to, a lot of motivations. And this was definitely one of mine, I would say, would be the ability to prove everyone wrong.
You just wanted to flex on everybody.
Oh my God. I mean, not that much, but definitely some people who were like a bit more pessimistic towards it.
Mhm.
Like, oh my God, my dad, I'm gonna flip him off.
Fuck you, Dad.
Throw a fucking stink bomb at his house, something. But no, I mean, it's whatever you can find to push you towards that finish line is always a good thing.
Absolutely.
And I mean, that's realistically, as I said, that's the only way you can do it. I mean, unless you have a reason to be able to get up every day and work towards this entrepreneurial venture for maybe like 8 to 12 hours and not get paid for it immediately, you're not going to be able to make it. It's as simple as that, I guess. But also the whole idea of a 9 to 5, as I said, it's very ridiculous to me. I don't think we should be working that many hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe we're used to it, and I'm not saying anything about like, economic structure or whatnot, but I definitely just think like we all have the ability not to. It sucks, the process of going through it, but at the end of the day, there's a light at the end of the tunnel that is, I would say, a lot better than just like slaving away for 40 years. And finally, I would just say, find me in 6 months.
6 months.
6
2
months.
years.
6 months at the latest. That's a very conservative number. I would say the next 3 months personally, but
Okay.
let's go 6 months. Why not? I'll probably be around on 2.0 eventually, and I can update you.
All right. I'll let the people know how you're doing.
Of course.
So we're getting to a point now to where typically we'll be wrapping up. So what I like to try and do here is give, whoever's on the pod a chance to kind of bring whatever topic that they have towards the end, and we can just discuss it. Bullshit. It doesn't have to be anything serious. It can be serious. Whatever you kind of want to roll with to kind of close out the episode. I'll leave it in your hands.
So there's definitely a lot of topics that intrigue me.
There is. We might have to do this over again just because of the whole microphone being a piece of shit, but we'll see what happens.
Whatever happens. Topic capitalism always.
Oh,
It always is interesting. It's an interesting discussion for me. College experiences never bad, but I would say, as I'm an investor, even though I work on the more smaller time frames, I still pay attention to the overall market sentiment. And I would say the overall condition of the economy is a very interesting one, and one that is probably going to surprise people, because I feel like I'm not. Well, actually, let me just stop there. Without me saying anything, what do you think the economy is going to look like in the next year? Let's just say year. 2 years, maybe.
So I would say, based off of, everything that's gone on in the last year, a lot of people, including myself at one point, would kind of point towards things have to improve at some point, right? Like drastically on a large scale for basically everybody. But the weird thing is we've kind of seen that with all the crazy shit that's going on, how, the stock market is not necessarily responding, in accordance with that. What the fucking Dow, or is it the Dow or the S&P?
I mean, same idea basically, but mainly.
What am I saying? Yeah, absolutely. It's basically hitting an all-time high right now, more or less, right? And if you take all the things that are going on into consideration, it's like why is that the case? Something just doesn't add up. So, for me, it's like once we get a vaccine, once things start to look kind of like back to normal how they used to be, one would like to think that things are going to go back to normal. But I think there's also this overwhelming sense that that's not necessarily the case. We have a new, presidency getting ready to take office. All the things with the virus, all the things with the social injustice issues that we've had over the last year. It just doesn't seem to point towards the fact that things are going to clear up that easily. And, at this point, I kind of get the sense that as far as the economy is concerned, we might have somewhat more of a significant dip than we do a spike. So it's kind of where I'm at. And that's kind of some of the research that I've done in the last few weeks as far as like investing in stocks and some of the conversations that we've kind of had, behind closed doors. So that's kind of my 2 cents and thoughts of where we're headed.
I mean, that's fair. It's certainly fair.
There's a lot to unravel there, but
Yeah, I guess from a Main Street perspective, I mean, that's just the average individual may or may not own stock. I mean, things seem halfway decent, unless you're a business owner, obviously.
yeah.
Small business owner, that is. I mean, things are definitely looking pretty grim, but overall, I mean, the stock market is doing tremendously. It's reached new highs within the last 3 weeks. But you have to consider the fact that we're not fully open. We're working maybe at like max 60%. That's absolute max. 50%, I would say, is more likely, but probably even less than that, considering a lot of places are only open 50%. Some places aren't even open. So things don't make sense. And usually when things don't line up, that's a sign of some sort of bubble. I mean, housing prices, for example, were just astronomically high in 2008, driven by just an unbelievable amount of speculation, basically. So in the same sense, I mean, why is the stock market so high when it shouldn't be, is basically what I'm saying. But the real issue, I believe, is not going to come from the stock market. It's more going to be a crisis with the US dollar.
Okay.
Which on the surface may not seem like a huge deal, but we have to take into consideration that the US dollar is the world reserve currency, which basically means other countries are confident enough in the US dollar to basically just hold large amounts of it. It's basically the backup. Like everybody accepts US dollars, more or less. So the problem is it's fiat currency. It's not backed by anything, technically. They took it off the gold standard in, I think, 1972, it might be, or something like that, 1971. So now it's basically just a promise. It's like, here, this is basically worth this, but there's no actuality to it. So what happens is when there's all this inflation, there's money printing. I mean, we're in a crisis, so I'm not going to justify whether or not we should be printing stimulus money or whatnot, but regardless, we're printing a lot of money. What that does is devalue the currency. I mean, I trade currencies. It's not hard for me to see that the US dollar has been just tanking downward. And basically what happens is eventually, if that gets bad enough, and you combine that with the fact that our debt is like in the trillions, I'm not sure exactly, is it 7 trillion, 10 trillion, some ridiculous number.
The fact that it's even in the trillions is not a good sign.
Yeah. So we could eventually default on this debt. I believe that's how the Greek currency had somewhat of a crash or something like that.
Right.
But the fact that we have a reputation, like we're the world reserve currency. So if that happens, I mean, this would bring about a lot of bad things. And people say that the coronavirus crash was basically just a harbinger. It was like a little appetizer for what's to come, because it kind of showed the fragility of everything. Right. And what did we do? We just made it worse. We printed a boatload of fucking money, and we're going to probably do it again. And eventually it's going to happen, whether it's Biden, whether it's Trump, whoever's in office. Like eventually our debt's going to continue to grow. And eventually we're not going to be able to pay that debt. Or, I mean, we can't pay it now, but eventually it's going to get to a point where something's going to tip. If the US dollar crashes, not only is the stock market going to crash, bond market's probably going to be in absolute turmoil too. People are going to lose a lot of money. And I mean, this isn't just me speculating. This is a lot of upper level analysts saying this, that this could be like a global depression, which whatever that, I mean, we've never experienced it, so we really have no idea, but apparently financially it could be bad. So
apparently
things took a pretty pessimistic turn. I'm not totally sure. I hope I'm wrong, but either way, whether I'm right or wrong, I'm definitely preparing.
So it seems like a lot of things are pointing in that direction.
Well, yeah,
unfortunately,
I mean, you can only create
so much fucking debt.
Well, yeah, because think about it this way. I mean, people don't think about how inflation is the target is 2% a year, right? So in, I guess, practicality sense, that basically means we're losing 2% of our money each year because our currency, our money in our pocket is losing 2% of the value. But this is just getting crazy because they're printing trillions of dollars, billions of dollars, whatever.
Just for these stimulus packages.
Yes.
And which are kind of like important to keep people
to an extent, they're useful.
Keep people above water.
And I'm not an economist and I'm not sure how I would approach the situation, but I'm just saying that you can only print so much money before there's an adverse effect. And definitely this next round of unemployment, I don't know if there's stimulus check, but there's going to be a pretty big, at least buff to the economy. If we lock down again, it's going to make our situation worse, which at this point we can't escape it. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
Every 90 years or so, there is a massive crash. Last one was 1929. You add it up, it's high time for something big. But I don't know. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully people won't lose their pensions. But
if they haven't already,
I don't know. Yeah, seriously. Fuck pensions anyways. You should just be having your own stock portfolio. Come on. Watch a YouTube video and learn how to fucking trade stocks. My goodness, it's not that hard.
God damn. Well, you heard it first here. Be on the lookout for that little crash or whatever could potentially happen moving forward. I think that's going to wrap things up unless you have anything else for us.
I wouldn't say so to anybody out there who may be listening. It's trying to follow a dream. Don't give up. Take this as a sign. Whatever it may be, whether you're trying to be on fucking America's Funniest Home Videos, OnlyFans, twerking for Simon Cowell, or being fucking, I don't know, Batman. Eventually, you'll get it.
It's
just the rate of progression. Stick to it.
There we go. And we'll have Matt back on in a few weeks, few months, and see how things are going. We'll do a little check-in. And hopefully if things go well, we'll have him on a few more times in the near future, and maybe a few more times in the somewhat distant future. But thanks again, guys, for all your support. I really appreciate it. If you enjoy what we're putting out here, if you enjoy the content that we're making, all I ask is that you follow us on Instagram at thisonesforyou.pod. That's thisonesforyou.pod. And you can really find us anywhere that you stream your podcast, whether that be Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes. It doesn't really matter. Give us a follow, leave a review. Any kind of support that you can give us really makes a big difference. Bud Light, that'd be huge.
Bud Light Seltzer
would be huge. Any kind of support or anything you can do to kind of help us out, I'd really appreciate it. But in the meantime, guys, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you in the next one.